Hey, I'm Guy.
I'm John.
It's our YouTube channel. Subscribe to it. Give this video a like.
We have a podcast below in the description as well. Subscribe.
We're presented by our friends at Tito's Handmade Vodka.
#1 vodka in America, Tito's. Go make yourself a cocktail.
My attitude coming out, and you and I have been talking about Trey Lance, people who've been listening or watching us for a few weeks, know that we came back from the first camp we saw him, first OTA, but especially the first camp, and said, this guy could be your quarterback this year, and he might be your quarterback week one. To me, if Kyle Shanahan appeared in the chat right now, was like, what should I do, fellas? I'd say, let's just call it a competition now, because I want to see him with George Kittle. Right? I want to see him with now maybe Kittle doesn't play. I want to see him with a first-team offensive line, or your version of it. Trent Williams didn't start tonight at left tackle. But let's give him a shot, because I think there's a misconception.
So would you start him in one of these preseason games?
I would just, I'd either start him or I'd leave the other guys in. But if it's a competition, that means he might start.
Yeah.
You only get 3 of them, and the third one's going to be your dress rehearsal, right? But I would treat him like it's a competition moving forward, because I think there's a misconception. And I thought this going into the draft, there was a misconception that Kyle Shanahan would play it safe. But Kyle Shanahan, it's not his nature. He's not a play it safe guy. And I think there's a misconception right now that Kyle, if he could choose, would choose Jimmy to be his quarterback.
I agree. I think that is the perception by you, me, and just by a lot of random fans.
And I think that's a misconception.
Yes.
I don't think Kyle, if we said, Kyle, what do you want to happen? I don't think Kyle would say, I want Jimmy to be the guy. Kyle would say, I want Trey Lance to be the guy. How do we know that? Well, he drafted him 3rd. He believes in him. And the other reason I think that is what he did to start the game. Like, if he had any fear of media momentum, fan momentum, social media momentum, teammate momentum, getting in the way of this perceived plan to install Jimmy and rig it so Jimmy can be the starter, then he would have the choice to not set Trey Lance up to hit a bomb on the first play of the game, which is what he tried to do.
He would first, second down run the ball, right?
He set Trey Lance up to hit a home run from the jump, and one of those moments where they're running down the field like this, yeah. Right? So
he wanted it. He wanted
it. Because in his heart of hearts, that's what Kyle is. Kyle, for being the tough guy who wants to run the rock, is also a style guy. He's a flat brim, backward hat, Yeezys, joggers, and let's do some sweet shit out here, guy. And let's punch people in the face with it.
Tall, skinny, rich guys usually are.
Yeah. So that's what he's here. I don't think in his head he's trying to rig it for Jimmy. I do not think that.
I agree. I would agree with you. I think you're on to something with it's a misconception. I would just be fascinated how comfortable he is. Just a couple things like tonight, like in a game situation where he's like, if I start Trey Lance, because here's the thing. If you start Trey Lance, you want to just dive into him versus Jimmy?
Yeah, this is it. We're in.
Okay. If you start Trey Lance, which I am for, my philosophical belief, Trevor Lawrence, I mean, it's easy with Zach Wilson and Trevor Lawrence. But Justin Fields, Trey Lance, over the years with all these guys, and we've seen a ton of them come in, right? The last 4 or 5, I bet if we added it up, there's been more quarterbacks like the last 3 years go in the first round. I mean, the multiple years have had 5. That's 10. And then another year had like 4. We got a lot.
And a lot of them played.
All of them have played. A lot,
Baker,
and a lot of them started from week 1.
Herbert, even if keep going.
But for a lot of those guys, if you were down, it didn't matter if you were playing the Lions, the Sacramento Mountain Lions, or the New England Patriots. If that guy, and you started him week 1, had 2 picks and you're down at halftime, it's like, it sucks, don't get me wrong, but you're not like going to take him out of the game. What if you were down 14-7 to the Lions at halftime and he had thrown 2 picks and a pick 6? Like, listen, I'd be the first to say you got to live and die with it, but I'd understand, like, Kyle, like, fuck this.
If
I ain't losing the Lions.
You said if you went to Garoppolo? Yeah.
So that is part of the problem. Like, it doesn't get – I think there's a decent chance the Lions are the worst team in the league. I think the Jags are going to be pretty terrible, but, like, their quarterback's better than Jared Goff. They could just make more plays. What if you were down at halftime? Just something like, it's easy for me to say, and listen, I would start him, but that is a scenario that Kyle has to talk about. Like, can you just start yanking him, mess with his confidence, or you could argue it doesn't even matter. There's the pros. He's clearly going to be our guy. We're just going to live and die with it. Because you could argue you treat it like a platoon situation in baseball. Like, he'll figure it out big picture. It's not even that big a deal. It's more if Jimmy can handle it, but Trey, like, he'll be fine.
Well, what did John Lynch say in his interview today with Tim Ryan?
Jimmy's the best arm talent in the league?
With the glorious mane of Tim Ryan and Greg Papa, who also has great hair, but next to Tim Ryan, it's like...
No, he looks like me next to Tim Ryan.
He said, what did he say? He said, Jimmy loves to compete. So the beauty of the scenario you're drawing up is there's 2 preseason games between now and that scenario. Like, you can have a competition between then and then make the decision about who starts against the Lions. Well, I'm just saying I think that we should have that now.
Well, to me then, Guy.
John, let's tell the people about our friends at DraftKings, promo code HAM.
Daily fantasy, baby. Download the DraftKings app. Use the promo code HAM. Get in our league. You can find it below in the description. DraftKings, download the app, promo code HAM. You have this week coming up against the Chargers.
Yeah.
And when they roll out Derwin James and some of their legit starters on defense, it can't just be Jimmy. Like, you have to see him versus those guys. Like, I want to see Trey, if I'm Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, get live reps on those guys in the practice. Because normally your ones would just go against Chargers. Ones would be very normal, right? I got to cook the books a little bit on that one. And luckily he kind of has. But I think you really got to push the envelope. Because like you said, I watched Jimmy with some of the Niners pregame with Vern Glenn. I do think Jimmy's being genuine. He's like, Trey's been cool. And he basically alluded to, he could have come in 3rd pick entitled or whatever, and it hasn't been like that at all. Like, I've enjoyed being around him. Like, I know a lot of people are making this big deal about it, but it's been good. Like, I think Trey pretty likable, and Jimmy is the guy's guy, and maybe they just kind of like each other. It would be human nature. Like, if me and you were just competing, there was just one microphone, and whoever got it, the other guys had to sit on the sideline. Right, it'd be human nature. There is competition there, but maybe it helps Jimmy make so much money that he knows big picture it's going to be okay as long as he just keeps playing well. That I do think you can kind of move past it. I'm sure he's had some Belichick's probably texted him some words of encouragement. It's probably easier to compartmentalize everything. He's just an older player, right? He's not. If he was a 3rd-year guy, I think we see it happen sometimes. Like, let's just use this example. The way Gardner Minshew has handled Trevor Lawrence has not sounded the same way that Jimmy is handled. And I'm not comparing the 2 players, but Gardner just says some stupid shit. You're like, Gardner, calm down. Jimmy just doesn't come off like that. So you could argue you might be able to mold this situation any way you feel fit. Like, if you in a game you want to give Trey back-to-back series, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Which is not ideal because but it's
part of paying. You're paying a guy $25 million in the case of Garoppolo, right? You can't really say anything. I guess you could, but you're right. It's not in his nature, nor is it in his upbringing, his football upbringing. Yeah. And it's clearly not in Trey's upbringing, right? You and I talked the other day about Trey Lance's press conference, where it was just a whole lot of I just love my teammates. Oh, George Kittle, he's talented.
You think it helps that both guys? They're really their root is Northern Illinois and North Dakota State. Like, no one really blows you like you're starting quarterback at Texas or Alabama.
And I think their default personality is teammate. Like, their default is just be a good teammate, right? Their default is not I need to be the I would imagine their default is not be a good teammate. Let me rephrase. Their default is I'm not the life of the party guy. Like, they're probably not, when there's 5 guys hanging out, friends, like, neither one of those guys has to be the one getting all the attention, right? Yeah. So I think in that way you're right. Yeah, I think there is something to that.
Before Kittle comes in.
Yeah. But that's fine. Like, you need all kinds. It's just it'd be hard if one of them maybe was more that way. Or, but to your point on the colleges, like, they're both guys. Who was it? Oh, it was. Did you tweet this? The Bills. Dan Graziano wrote a thing about the Bills the other day.
Yeah, it was pretty sweet.
Brian Dable. Was it Brian Dable, the offensive coordinator, that did it?
Yeah.
And said to the whole, for those of you who didn't see it, he gets up in a meeting room and he said, what was it like? Who here is
starts with the coaches? He goes, anyone in here not been fired, sit down.
Or
he tells the whole room to stand up. Anyone in here not been fired, sit down. Every coach sits down. Anyone here not been cut or traded, everyone sits down.
Even though Mitchell Trubisky technically was just not contract renewed, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then there was one guy standing up, and it was Josh Allen. Oh, because he said, everyone stand up who's not a first-round pick that hasn't been cut or traded. Well, Trubisky was a first-round pick, but he was essentially cut.
Sat, yeah.
And Josh Allen was the lone guy standing in the room with all the players, including the coaches. And he said, Josh, how many college, scholarship offers? And he said, none.
Yeah, coming out of high school. Yeah.
And his message was never forget where you come from. And I was like, damn, that is an incredible story.
Great message.
That feels very like that. Is that a Saban Belichick thing that he picked up?
It could be. Although I don't know how Saban would do that.
Yeah, you're right. It'd be a Belichick thing.
Anybody who was not a 5-star, sit down.
You're right. Saban, that'd be impossible. He
That's
can do it with the
good.
coaches because he hires a lot of fired guys.
Yeah, that's true. But, yeah, I mean, I just think this situation, whether you think Trey should be the starter, whether you think Jimmy should be the starter, let's compromise here and say, at minimum, this should be a competition, though. Let's make it it has been a competition. If practice is about competing, then it's already been a competition. Unofficially, Garoppolo's getting a lot of opportunities with the ones, but make it a competition. And if Garoppolo is the starter, then if he wins the job, he wins the job. But I don't think Shanahan has an interest in rigging it for Garoppolo. I do think he and Mike McDaniel legitimately just want to make sure Trey Lance is ready for it.
I think
because of the situation
I think there's a big week with the Chargers. Just those practices leading into the game. It's like one thing I feel just watching a couple preseason games, it's clear it felt like most of the preseason games this week, a lot of the teams joint practiced, and there's like a carried on conversation from the week that leads into the game. And maybe part of it too is like the broadcasters are all work for the team, so like they've been at practices and they know it's like one big momentum. And I think the number one story for Chargers 49ers is going to be, obviously Herbert is one of the biggest stories in the league, but the Niners quarterback situation truly is. Because Kyle kind of has, but he didn't go as far as Nagy. Like, no matter what, Dalton's going to be the number one quarterback week one. Yeah. He just said, like, Jimmy's our starting quarterback. But then, like, things like tonight happen. He makes that throw, and you just go, God, I don't know, man. But Jimmy just has the experience, and I still lean, as we sit here today, after they're both there. I mean, Jimmy didn't even have a performance. He got a drive.
He had four air yards, I think is what Josh Dubow wrote. 3 of 3, 4 air yards.
My confidence level, Jimmy starting week one, probably was like 80-20 a week and a half ago. It's moved to 70-30, and right now it's like 65-35, but I think it's going to be hard for it to get to 50-50. There's going to need to be a couple moments.
Yeah, which he had a couple tonight, but it wasn't.
And that's where he gained a little steam. He had a moment.
He had some moments, but then it also kind of, there were more opportunities for moments. 60 seconds or whatever it was on the clock, 2 timeouts. Here we go. Can you get down the field? It's like, oh, right.
Yeah, he does enough for Kyle to say with a straight face, like, yeah, I mean, he could have thrown multiple picks. That would be a problem, right? Without hesitation.
Right. But that's part of the deal, and this is where we go back to Garoppolo. It has not just been another misconception, or I think this gets repeated because it gets said, and then it just gets repeated and regurgitated. It's just an availability issue with Jimmy. It has not just been an availability issue with Garoppolo, right? It also is, well, is he going to make mistakes? Is he going to turn the ball over? Is he going to? It's not just about injury. So, I mean, are you guaranteed to not be down 14-7 at the half against the Lions if Garoppolo's the starting quarterback?
Well, in my limited Jimmy note-taking here, I have Debo. He hits him on a first down.
Yep.
He throws it behind him. And throwing it behind him makes him stop, and then he jukes out the guy. But if he hits him in stride, the guy probably tackles him. And then there's another ball with Ayuk over the middle.
So maybe he did it on purpose, John.
Or do you think he did? Do you remember that play?
I do remember the play. I'd have to go back and watch it to decide.
Then there's a play to the fullback who somehow you and I, our Fresno State guys in the house, are that we don't know there's a Fresno State guy on the 49ers. And not that it was a terrible throw, but it's just Jimmy is not pinpoint. Like, he has to slow down a little bit to reach all the way up instead of just hitting a guy in stride. Like, for a guy who's not mobile, who doesn't have a huge explosive arm, it's not like, well, Jimmy's pinpoint. It's like, well, he's a little, I wouldn't call him like shotgun scatter shot, but he's not like some Navy SEAL with a pistol in his hand. Like, the guy's probably he's gonna miss a decent amount of times too. So that's where Jimmy playing a whole game, like Jimmy's just liable to throw a couple picks. Yeah, that's the thing. Like, you always resort back to, like you've been hammering home, Jimmy is not some just fail safe, perfect, like, worst case scenario, we'll just go 12 of 15. Just be, nitpick them to death, for 200 yards and run the ball. Like, Yeah, I mean, those 3 or 4 passes could you hold you on for your ass.
Well, you know what's funny is like noted Giants fan Alex Smith, who was at the Giants game on Friday night. Got a
Guy, he
standing O.
moved back to the Bay Area.
Well, I know he just built a big home. Buddy of mine told me down in Wood. It's just north
Woodside?
of Palo Alto. Woodside, is that where it is?
Yeah.
Yeah. Apparently, he's building or built or just. He has a
Go to his
humongous
spot
house.
track. He's made some money in his career.
You know, his year, his years in Kansas, his 2 best years in Kansas City, 67.5%. If I told you what were Jimmy's 2019 16 games, 2020 completion percentage, what would you guess? What would you guess? Let's say last year, 6 games. What do you think he was?
61.
He was 67, but it's not the same 67% as Alex Smith's 67, right? Where it was always like Alex never takes any chances. Alex never does anything risky. But Alex was, I feel, more accurate than Jimmy was, even though the numbers don't necessarily reflect that.
Alex Smith was definitely more accurate than Jimmy.
At least less. I don't want to say risk averse because Jimmy is. It's weird. He's kind of risk averse, but he does do some things outside of the script that feel a little risky sometimes.
I would say Jimmy's more. I would say Jimmy's more of a playmaker than Alex. Alex may coaches. By the time Alex became who he became, you feel more comfortable going into the game with Alex. Yes.
David on YouTube says I'd take late career Alex Smith. Agreed.
I would too. So would Andy Reid, and so would Kyle Shanahan.
Yeah.